It's the most controversial Princess Diana story ever. It made world headlines and sent shockwaves through the British establishment.
After decades of whispers, icy glares and royal tension, Queen Camilla has finally broken her silence on Princess Diana, and what she revealed has stunned the world. No more rehearsed smiles or carefully avoided questions. This time, Camilla spoke from the heart, and the truth is far more complicated than anyone expected. From hidden regrets to long-buried secrets, her words have reignited a firestorm within the monarchy and beyond. But what really happened between the Queen and the people's princess? This is the moment Camilla spoke out and never looked back. Whispers of regret. Camilla's grief. No one expected. The last hymn faded, guests slipped through ancient oak doors, and bouquets that minutes earlier dazzled in royal colors already drooped under their perfume. In the hush that followed, St. George's Chapel seemed to hold its breath. This wasn't reverence. It was the stillness that arrives after all final words have been spoken, when even stone seems to listen. The service had never been advertised or streamed. 25 years after the night the world lost Princess Diana, her family returned for a memorial meant only for themselves. No scarlet uniforms lined the aisle. No camera flashes bounced off stained glass. Only kings, princes, and a handful of friends exchanged crowns for the heavier weight of memory. At the altar rested a humble tribute, a single white wreath, one tall candle, and a marble tablet etched with Diana's name. It looked fragile under the soaring arches, a reminder that the woman millions called the people's princess was once simply Diana Frances, daughter, sister, mother. While courtiers whispered, Queen Camilla drifted forward. Her steps echoed like distant clock chimes. No trumpet announced her, hush alone opened the way. Every gaze followed, unsure what courtesy required. Camilla leaned toward King Charles and murmured a request closer to breath than speech. Charles nodded. William stepped back, unreadable. Diana's sisters bowed their heads. Protocol dissolved. Something older than etiquette took its place. Aides, clerics, and guards slipped beyond the doors, leaving them ajar so any sudden cry could carry. In the vast emptiness, Queen Camilla faced the memory she once tried to ignore. Tabloids had painted her as the shadow behind every tear Diana shed. Now, the shadow was confronting the light. She moved until her knees met the cold stone. They gave way, and she folded down as if gravity finally spoke. The crown felt irrelevant. The only crown here was the carved name beneath her palms. Quiet tremors shook her shoulders. One tear darkened the marble, vanished, and another followed. Many believed Camilla's heart was sealed behind layers of royal routine and perfectly timed smiles. Few remembered the young woman who once loved muddy, countryside, rides, and careless laughter long before duty rewrote her calendar. As she knelt, those buried years burst like lantern slides. A first dance with Charles, hushed calls at twilight, headlines shouting louder than her own voice. Each image arrived fast, and each stung, reminding her how every private choice had been dragged into the unforgiving daylight and merciless glare. Outside, bells marked the hour as if warning no secret stays silent. No official lens captured the moment, yet those outside heard a sound impossible to mistake for staged sorrow. Rough, uncontrolled sobs from someone who has carried a secret load through decades of smiling pictures. Witnesses later whispered a single sentence between gulps of breath. "I never meant for it to be like this." 14 words that echoed where thousands of words of protocol had never reached. Was it guilt loosening those tears? The regret of being cast as history's villain? Or plain grief? The human ache of seeing how a life broke under burdens too heavy. Perhaps it was something harder to name, a mixture only time can brew. Truth hid behind red-rimmed eyes, yet the question rang louder than any Westminster bell. Outside, aides traded uneasy looks. They had expected composure, maybe a discreet dab of a handkerchief, never this raw collapse. Some felt pity, others protectiveness, and a few, despite themselves, felt relief. Proof that the woman long portrayed as unfeeling did indeed feel. In that honesty lay a fragile bridge. Maybe not forgiveness, but the first plank across years of silence. Long after the chapel doors closed, whispers seeped through palace walls. Staff spoke of a monarch on her knees, of tears that blurred past and present, and of a single candle that seemed to burn lower once she rose. Newspapers would feast on the tale, yet its heart belonged to something older than headlines. The complicated truth that every soul, royal or not, houses rooms no outsider can fully map. But what secret still keeps the new queen awake when palace lights fade? Stay tuned, because the next heartbeat exposes Camilla's private pain. The weight of silence. Camilla's private pain. Revealed. For years, Camilla's voice was kept behind palace walls while tabloids hurled insults and crowds hissed her name. She stayed quiet, not because hurt skipped her heart, but because replying was forbidden. The story of the doomed triangle had already been printed in permanent ink, casting Camilla as the villain before she ever spoke a line. So she married Charles, slipped into the same gilded rooms where Diana's laughter once echoed, and smiled for cameras that zoomed in on every twitch. Yet Diana's presence clung to those corridors like perfume that never fades, reminding everyone, including Camilla, that the late princess still owned the room. That weight grew heavier each year. You could see it in Camilla's straight shoulders, the precise tilt of her hat, the careful way she folded her hands when reporters shouted questions she would never answer. The silence became armor and prison all at once, shielding her yet trapping every unspoken feeling inside, and personal shame beneath. Then came the quiet service marking 25 years since Diana's passing. Without flashing bulbs or scripted remarks, Camilla knelt before the memorial. Decades of restraint collapsed in one sharp breath. Tears slipped past the etiquette she'd mastered. The apology that followed wasn't rehearsed. It was raw, whisper-thin, and powerful, because it finally showed the world a woman, not a character. In that instant, the royal machine, engineered for control, stalled. Tradition teaches royals to reveal just enough emotion to appear human, but never enough to shake the crown. Camilla's breakdown shattered that rule. Courtiers traded urgent looks, messengers hurried through stone corridors, and an institution built on silence suddenly had a heartbeat no protocol could muffle. Viewers who once dismissed her as calculating glimpsed something startlingly real and maybe necessary, because public faith in the monarchy has frayed. Younger Britons question its purpose. Older generations cling to memories of Diana's grace. By exposing private sorrow, Camilla pulled the curtains back on an ancient stage and reminded millions that even crowns carry weight. Polls now show barely half the nation believes the crown speaks for them, and social feeds flood with heated debates over taxpayer funds. Even Commonwealth countries voice second thoughts, hinting that the age of unquestioned deference may be fading faster than anyone admits, day by day. But as her tears dried, whispers turned to distant thunder. Would the House of Windsor close ranks or fracture under the strain? Keep watching for the royal family's reaction. The royals stood still, their reaction to Camilla's breakdown. For the first time in living memory, the stone walls of St. James's Chapel carried a sound they were never designed to hold: a queen sobbing. Camilla had asked for privacy, yet her low, broken breaths drifted through rows of empty pews like smoke after a candle is snuffed. Within seconds, curiosity turned corridors into echo chambers. Charles paused mid-step, his rigid mask slipping as memories he buried behind schedules rose like tidal water. Watching the woman he chose tremble beside Diana's flowers forced him to admit the past had never really left. William lingered near the doorway, unsure whether to comfort or retreat. His relationship with Camilla had always been courteous, never warm. Now courtesy felt useless. A flicker of shared loss crossed his face, the same expression the nation saw when he followed his mother's coffin years ago. Further back, Diana's sisters stayed still, hands clasped, eyes glistening. No comforting words passed between them. Instead, an unusual hush settled, heavy enough to press against the stained glass saints. Even seasoned palace staff, trained to enter and exit unseen, lingered at a respectful distance. They sensed this scene was neither photo opportunity nor crisis drill, but something rarer: truth. To those who stood vigil at Diana's funeral in 1997, the feeling was uncanny. Back then, grief poured down the mall like rain, every sob televised, every headline wet with tears. Camilla had been invisible in that script, condemned by strangers who thought they knew her. 25 years later, she stood center stage, but not before cameras, only witnesses, her sorrow finally unchained. In that kneel lay more than regret for one woman's fate. It held decades of headlines, unspoken apologies, midnight doubts, and the weary knowledge that public forgiveness demands public pain. Yet the silence inside the chapel made her confession stronger than any press statement. Tears sparkling on marble said what 30 interviews never dared. She felt it all. Inside Clarence's house, advisors scrambled through press releases already drafted for calmer days. Some urged a swift statement of solidarity. Others feared that admitting vulnerability would reopen wounds the monarchy could never fully heal. Meanwhile, veterans among the servants whispered that genuine emotion might do what polished speeches could not: remind people that the crown is worn by humans, not marble statues. Yet the risk was clear. Every tear captured by a reporter's pen could be twisted into weakness, hypocrisy, or proof that the institution was crumbling from within, brick by gilded brick. Even allies wondered how long the walls would stand. Outside the chapel gates, tourists noticed tightened security and guessed a diplomatic visit. They could never imagine the storm brewing behind limestone walls. Television anchors rehearsed breaking news scripts while crisis managers refreshed trending hashtags, praying public sympathy would outweigh renewed anger. Yet rage and mercy often share the same fragile heartbeat. But if sorrow can unite a fractured family, will it also split a nation, stir parliament, or reshape Commonwealth loyalties? Keep watching. The next tremor echoes into political fallout. Camilla's public reckoning: truth or performance? No secret inside palace walls stays hidden for long. The moment whispers of Queen Camilla's tear-stained collapse slipped through Windsor's gates, emotions split like lightning across a summer sky. Some viewers felt a lump in their throats. Others crossed arms. Millions asked one sharp question: honest grief or careful politics? Camilla has spent 2 decades stitching a reputation torn in Diana's wake. Every handshake, every quiet hospital visit, every garden party laugh has lived under an unforgiving lens. She learned to tell gentle jokes in children's wards, to keep her hands still when cameras clicked, and to let silence answer the cruelest headlines. When crowds finally stopped booing, she dared to believe the worst chapter had closed. Yet one whispered account of private tears reminded her that stories never die. They merely sleep until a fresh breath wakes them. News channels looped a single phrase: she knelt and cried, while experts filled hours with clashing theories. A court historian claimed the tears proved she always cared. A former press officer countered that timing is power, and the 25th anniversary offered perfect cover. podcasts dissected her tone. Tabloids dug up forgotten photographs, and social feeds turned into dueling courtrooms. Somewhere between cheers and sneers sat a simple truth. Tears can be both real and strategic. Inside Buckingham, Camilla knows the world rarely accepts two ideas at once. She is queen, but also a woman who feels regret grow heavier with age. Grief, when it arrives, never knocks. It kicks open the door in muddy boots and drags memories you thought buried, all without apology or warning. Yet in a palace built on show, even raw feeling risks looking rehearsed, especially with lenses waiting beyond the gates. That is why her breakdown yanked old ghosts back into daylight. It forced new talk of Diana, of blame, of whether time heals or simply hides bruises beneath velvet sleeves. Courtiers had hoped the story was settled. Instead, headlines. Now, wonder if scars once sealed are bleeding again. Camilla's public mask, warm but guarded, has cracked, revealing a face etched not by jewels, but by years of what-ifs. Skeptics call the crack cosmetic. Supporters swear buried pain finally spoke. Either view reshapes the saga. She is no longer only the consort beside Charles, but the figure on her knees before history, trying to understand choices that rewrote more than one life. With the world watching, forgiveness and suspicion circle like rival swans on the same dark lake. Hovering reporters, inherited myths, and restless public memory push both birds toward violent collision. Now one puzzle lingers. Can her unfiltered tears spark true forgiveness for uniting a fractured family, or will they stir storms no crown can ever calm? Stay glued right here. When grief bridged the royal rift. Inside the hushed chapel, Camilla's quiet collapse sent ripples far beyond the stone walls. For years, Diana's memory had hovered over every balcony wave, every ribbon-cutting photo, a bittersweet banner of pride and pain. Her absence held the family together in public, yet kept them apart behind closed doors. So when the queen consort's shoulders shook beside that candlelit tribute, something inside the Windsor lineage shifted. No grand speeches followed. Only long, unguarded glances. Charles meeting William's eyes, Diana's sisters nodding in silent understanding, generations sharing the same hush. Forgiveness did not burst forth, yet recognition bloomed. That grief is shared currency, never owned by one heart. William, seeing tears track Camilla's cheeks, suddenly faced a mirror of his wounds. The relentless tabloids had haunted them both, just from opposite sides of the headline. Even stoic Charles exhaled a breath locked away since 1997. One mistaken whisper might have shattered the trembling peace, so nobody spoke. The chapel's stained glass saints carried the conversation, sealing an unspoken pledge to walk the present together. Outside, news traveled faster than any royal motorcade. Staff murmurs slipped into journalists' inboxes, erupting into banner headlines. Some outlets called the scene overdue justice, others branded it strategic theater. Morning shows measured her sobs in decibels, while hashtag armies posted side-by-side shots of Diana's public cortege and Camilla's private vigil. Streaming-era viewers who grew up on conspiracy videos suddenly questioned their inherited biases. Seasoned historians unpacked the symbolism on podcasts. Mental health advocates praised an overdue display of vulnerability. Late-night comedians mined punchlines, mixing catharsis with ridicule. The story blossomed into a debate over legacy, honesty, and who controls royal sorrow for wider audiences. Buckingham Palace answered with calculated silence. Curtains stayed drawn, spokespeople rehearsed, but never delivered press lines. And that stillness roared louder than any prepared remark. Some advisors feared bare emotion would crack the monarchy's marble facade. Others whispered it might finally humanize an institution drifting from its people. Commonwealth commentators wondered if the moment would fuel Republican sparks abroad, while MPs in Westminster quietly tallied new angles for funding debates. Abroad, allies offered polite concern. At home, bookmakers adjusted odds on approval ratings. Inside the palace, Camilla's absence became its headline, each hour without sighting widening the public's curiosity and the family's unease. On digital forums, royal supporters and critics clashed in real time. Veterans recalled lining London streets in 1997, insisting Camilla could never feel the nation's loss. Younger posters countered that grief cannot be gatekept. Psychologists wrote viral threads explaining delayed remorse, while brand experts predicted a surge in positive sentiment if the palace embraced transparency. Even music playlists shifted. Radio stations spun Elton John's "Candle in the Wind" alongside newer ballads, an odd duet that stitched past and present with musical nostalgia for a captivated, divided audience worldwide. But as the nation holds its breath, will centuries-old etiquette smother this fragile spark of honesty or let it blaze a fresh path for the crown? Breaking protocol, Camilla's collapse and the price of truth. Royal life is a performance polished over centuries. From the moment heirs can walk, tutors drill one supreme commandment into their posture and smiles. Never complain, never explain. The rule guards the crown like an invisible moat, turning every curtsy into choreography and every silence into strategy. A monarch may reveal a polite tear at a hospital bedside, but anything messy, raw, or uncontrolled must remain hidden behind palace walls. That etiquette has survived wars, abdications, televised confessions, even pandemics, always intact, always unchallenged. Grief, though, obeys no spells. In the hush of St. George's Chapel, grief slipped past centuries of protocol and borrowed Queen Camilla's body. One moment, she was approaching Diana's memorial with measured steps. The next, her knees struck limestone, sobs ricocheting off stained glass. There was no discreet handkerchief raised, no calm aide whispering, "Compose yourself, ma'am." Just a crownless woman collapsing at the memory of another woman who never escaped tabloids or tunnels. The instinctive breakdown shattered the silent pact that emotion must be portioned out in teaspoons. Aides scattered, unsure whether to rush forward or disappear. Cameras were barred, yet rumors sprinted faster than any live stream. By dawn, breakfast shows replayed second-hand accounts, writers filled opinion columns, and hashtags argued in looping fury. Was the Queen Consort finally confessing decades of remorse or staging an anniversary gesture to thaw public frost? Each angle reflected someone's hope or suspicion. None captured the full weight of saltwater on marble. Commentators compared the moment to Elizabeth II's lifetime of practiced restraint. Her Majesty allowed tears only twice on camera, and even then the palace never confirmed them. Camilla's unfiltered sobs rewrote that stoic record in a heartbeat, forcing observers to wonder, if tears can break free, what other emotions might slip past the drawbridge of custom? Inside Buckingham's mirrored corridors, courtiers debated damage control, while outside, citizens debated forgiveness. For Camilla, the paradox was brutal. Years of steady appearances had dulled the old Diana-era anger. Now, one gust of honesty threatened either to rewind that progress or to propel her into unexpected empathy. Across the realm, people asked a deeper question. Can a 1,000-year institution survive the 21st century without shedding more of its armor? As sunlight stained the chapel floor, unanswered questions hovered, refusing to leave. Was this the crack that finally lets humanity breathe inside the palace, or merely a fleeting storm soon papered over by protocol? Stay with us to see how this electric uncertainty becomes a startling new royal vulnerability, or a cautionary tale. Whispers rise. Will Camilla's tears prompt Charles to speak plainly or push William to guard inherited mystique? Could the next crisis demand honesty over Polish? The monarchy teeters between tradition and transparency. What unfolds after those chapel echoes fade may shape the crown's next century. Yet the real story starts here. Could one unguarded sob redefine loyalty and lineage? Keep watching for a turning point for Camilla. The day Camilla's tears rewrote her legacy. Forget the trumpets at the coronation or the glittering coach ride on wedding day. The moment that may define Queen Camilla's entire royal path happened in a dim, echoing chapel when nobody was filming. One knee touched the polished stone, her shoulders shook, and the walls finally heard a truth years of protocol had kept silent. There are turning points made for front pages, and then there are the quiet ones that carry farther than any microphone. Camilla has long worn two clashing labels: villain in Diana's heartbreak and anchor in Charles's storm. Now another title emerges, a woman brave enough to grieve the figure who forever framed her story. Whether that softens public opinion is unknown, yet the Queen's choice to feel, to drop the guard, to let tears speak, is a first honest stroke in repainting her legacy. It was not strategy or damage control. It was a surrender to the weight she has carried since the 90s, and surrender can be surprisingly powerful. Historians already describe Diana as the reformer who pushed a stiff monarchy toward warmth. They will now note that Camilla, bending under Diana's shadow, nudged it a step further. The old royal style celebrated poise over pain. Camilla's breakdown proved that showing hurt need not mean losing respect. Her tears mark an evolution, from marble to skin, from ceremony to sincerity. They were not a spectacle. They were a reckoning, an acknowledgement of a ghost the palace never dared confront. Without a single spoken word, she admitted regret, complexity, and the loss woven between two intertwined lives. In that simple act, she offered something rare in royal history, an unspoken apology, perhaps even a gentle peace. A new era did not begin that day, yet something old ended. The silence, the distance, the constant pretending. Future tellings will not only recount that Camilla wept, they will explore why those tears mattered and how, for one brief, fragile moment, royalty stepped off its pedestal and stood beside the people, human at last. Reporters will soon ask if her honesty can heal old wounds or stir fresh ones. Commentators will dissect each tremble, trying to measure sincerity like data points. Yet numbers cannot capture the hush that filled that chapel, or the small shared breaths that followed. Perhaps this single memory, passed from aid to aid and then to us, will keep echoing long after official histories fade. But is this truly a sign of a more honest, human monarchy, or simply a perfectly timed performance? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.